Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Overlap Podcast with me, Sid Sexton, and my good friend, Keith Glines. Good afternoon, Keith.
Good afternoon. We've been in the studio a while today.
We've been cranking it out, man.
We have.
We've been cranking it out. You've been busy, I've been busy, and it's time to get back to work.
Get back to work.
Yeah.
We've got to get back to work, man.
I was about to say, there's no one better to demonstrate get back to work or get on some work than our esteemed guest today. But for those of you, here's the pitch.
Our steamy guest. It's hot outside, and he just walked in.
It is steamy.
Yeah.
But for those of you just tuning in to the Overlap Podcast, maybe a friend sent this to you and you have no idea what you're tuning into. Well, here in the Overlap Podcast, we discuss and study the overlaps between work, fitness, family, faith, parenting, and leadership, with the idea that becoming better in one aspect of your life helps you become better in all aspects of your life. And we try to do that by simplifying big business brilliance for small business leaders. Really using the microcosm that is your life within business and sort of extrapolating lessons for all other aspects of your life and then vice versa. So today we're going to talk about a pretty good topic that I think goes a little bit misunderstood in the EOS operation of a business.
I think it goes misunderstood in most small business, even that's not implementing.
That's a good point.
EOS.
Well, that's a really good point. There's lots of layers to that. But today we'll introduce the most EOS evangelistic person I've ever met. So much so that the dude has some EOS shoes. Have you seen the EOS shoes?
I was going to bring the shoes up, but so much more that he inked it on his body
permanently. I mean, tattoos. Forrest.
Yes, sir.
Forrest Derr, our esteemed guest. Were you aware that tattoos are permanent?
Yes, I did do some research on it before I decided to do it.
I just wanted to make sure.
The tattoo artist actually tried to talk me out of it just to make sure I knew what I was doing.
Oh, well, that's a good tattoo.
Yeah, it was good. It was real good.
Before we get started, was there alcohol involved with the decision to have a large tattoo?
Let's just say I had to sign a disclaimer before he would do the tattoo that said that there was not alcohol involved. So,
okay.
So I signed something that said there wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, cannot confirm nor deny all you're saying.
Plausible deniability.
Yeah, okay. There we go. So, welcome Forrest Derr for the second, third, fourth time to the Overlap Podcast. And today, what do you got for us?
We were going to talk about quarterly meetings and what that means in the world of EOS and the world of business.
Okay. And like he said, I do think it is a pretty misunderstood concept. Even with the folks that are operating on EOS, it's also a pretty core foundational piece. And also, even if you're not on a EOS, it's a pretty good practice for any business. Before we get going, why don't you just give us a quick bio, quick everything, and why you are the most evangelistic EOS person. I'm mispronouncing all of that, but
that's all right. I'll take it. So, yeah, EOS. I discovered it about 6 years ago at the company I worked for before, and after I discovered it and discovered what the integrator role was, it really transformed how I looked at everything, including my personal life. So as I discovered EOS and discovered the systems that build out the structure that allows you to operate a business or really any organization, it was a light bulb moment. It was a 10X moment for me to realize that I had been a closet integrator all my life, which I've interviewed a lot of integrators across the country, and that is a common theme for true EOS integrators is that they report back that I was a closet integrator before I knew what one was.
Well, my God, you have come out of the closet.
I've come out of the closet, yeah.
He's letting his freak flag fly now, sir.
That's right.
Thank you, Keith, for that visual.
Yeah.
That's great. But yeah, I do let my integrator freak flag fly. It's definitely something that has transformed how I look at the world and how I look at organizations and how I look at family. So we implemented EOS, got seated in the integrator role, got into the 90-day quarterly cadence. So the EOS is a 90-day world, and that's what we're going to talk about today is what does that 90-day look like. But it really just transformed how I think about business, how I think about life. And, I guess 6-8 months ago, 9 months ago, however many months ago, September, you and I had been working on building out an energy group, an EOS networking resource group that we started 2.5 years ago now. And the more we talked, the more we met, the more we realized, or I realized, that I wanted to join forces with you. And so made the jump, left telecom, which makes no sense. I was talking to somebody yesterday about this. What the heck were you thinking? You left telecom to landscaping. You don't know anything about landscaping. And
Perfect.
And as the conversation, progressed, he's like, "Oh, I get it. It's business, it's people, it's structure, it's processes. You can learn the landscaping. I can learn what a Japanese yew is. I can learn what the key word right there.
Also known as a podocarpus, but that's
a scientific.
That's for
name.
the horticulturalist.
Yeah, that's. But EOS really does help you structure any organization to be successful because it builds the framework for it. So
there we go. So. You touched on it.
Mm-hmm.
You went over it in the EOS, in an EOS run business, EOS run life, all of that stuff. You live in a 90-day world. Why is that?
Because you really can't focus on something more than 90 days. If you look at the persona, the psychology of it, everybody gets distracted. Everybody gets bored. Everybody gets, shiny squirrels run by within 90 days. And so if you build your life, your business, your organization around a 90-day cadence, you can really stay focused and accomplish certain things in that 90 days. We call them rocks, but you can accomplish rocks and projects in that 90 days so that you can build those out in a way that every 90 days you just reset.
Yeah.
Kick on a bunch of new rocks, reset, take on new rocks every quarter.
All right. Well, why don't you take the helm? Like, not that you haven't already, but for real, you're just, I'm setting you up. So why don't you go ahead, tell us about quarterly meetings and, well, let's just go. What do we need to know?
Yeah. So quarterly meetings, obviously they happen every 90 days. And in the EOS world, you really need to take that 90-day time window and reset the company based off of the VTO, Vision Traction Organizer, for those of you who haven't heard that terminology. Reset the company and make sure that you celebrate the wins, look at the accomplishments, look at the rocks that have been accomplished, but then also find out and discover what needs to be done in the next quarter. And if you have that 90-day cadence, it's been proven over and over again that successful businesses live in that 90-day world. If you try to do everything and just look at it annually, you're waiting a whole year to figure out whether you were successful or not. So that 90-day cadence is very successful in businesses, and it's made up of a meeting. So really what you do is you take your leadership team, you take your operations team, your sales team, whatever team you're on, and it is important to get outside of the office, to leave the office, leave the business, so to speak, behind, so that you can work on the business and not in the business.
There's a tremendous amount there.
Okay.
And that's okay. That's good. So the listener here, so you heard that, one, why do you do quarterly meetings? Because you can stay focused, and there's some pretty good research behind that. You can read Traction, you can read Get a Grip, you can read a bunch of EOS literature, and it will drive that point home. I would say this too, though, and I just wanted to sort of set the stage for the listener that maybe is not as familiar with EOS. Number one, we've got a number of podcasts. I was quickly trying to go through to see which podcast numbers. We can probably link those in the show notes where we probably have 7 or 8.
Yeah, the last time we were here, Forrest actually pulled those for us. So
there we go.
So he's got that list in a file somewhere, I'm sure.
It's actually in 90 in an issue.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Okay, got it.
So we've got a number of those. That would give you a cool little introduction. You could also read the book Traction. But more importantly than that, what you have done by this point, by the time you get to a quarterly meeting, you have had an annual meeting, and you've set at least a goal for the year.
Right.
And a goal is generally some sort of metric number, like this amount of sales, this amount of gross profit, this amount of whatever.
Hire this many people.
Yeah.
Let's
build
back
out
up
this
a little bit.
Those
though.
things.
Let's back up a little bit. Because
Okay.
I wish I would have interjected a little earlier.
Yeah, go ahead.
But if you're Billy Bob that just started his plumbing company,
Sure.
right? Who are you going to have in that meeting?
Well, what size
And
of
you
company
have,
is Billy Bob? Is it just Billy Bob and himself?
Yep, family business.
So family, so he's got other people?
Yep, maybe his wife works with him. Maybe his
Okay.
wife does the bookkeeping.
Okay. So
And because I would say that they've never had, because I was probably 5 years into business before I ever, one, thought about goals, and I was young, too. Two, ever thought about having, I had yearly goals, but ever thought about breaking it down quarterly. I would hear people at conferences I would go to say, oh, and everything's drawn up in quarters. We pay taxes quarterly. We do all of that kind of stuff quarterly most of the time when we have business. But how do you even start in the flow?
how do you start in the flow?
Meaning, what's the process that you have to take, Forrest, to even get your mind wrapped around having this meeting we're about to talk about? And you do this in your family, so it's kind
Sure,
of the
yeah.
same flow.
So that's a big question. So first of all, you have to commit that you're going to implement EOS and decide that that's what you're going to do. You need to understand the basic concepts. We talked about reading traction, read and get a grip, read those books to really get an understanding of the foundation. What I actually had my wife read, since you're going to get personal on me, what I had her read is What the Heck is EOS? Because that book really, it's a shorter book and it really helps with the terminology and the framework of EOS. But to get to that point where you get to that quarterly meeting, you need to go through the process of onboarding with EOS. And there's a proven process by EOS. Frankly, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I'm going to kind of spitball it here. But basically, you have a 90-minute meeting to decide how you're going to implement EOS, and then you have a couple of focus days. So there's a vision building day and then 2 focus building days where you map out all the major components at a high level for EOS. So you map out your VTO, which is, if you don't know, your 2-page business plan, your 5-year plan, your 3-year plan, your 1-year plan, your 90-day plan. Go ahead and build that out. It won't be perfect. It won't be 100% accurate. You're going to suck at it. Let's just be real. But when you get that first draft built out, now you have the foundation to start running your business and then getting into that 90-day world. Because every 90 days, part of the process you go through is you read through that VTO word for word, line for line. You look at everything on that 2 pages and discuss it and make sure that everything is still on track with where you want to take the business. Everybody has a horrible VTO the first time. But after you look at it every quarter, it's like Novocaine, it will work eventually. And after 2 quarters, 3 quarters, 4 quarters, you're going to see that you've reached the point where you have a plan that works and is attainable. So does that answer the question?
It does. It does. Because I just wanted people to understand that just starting out in business, I was probably very late to the game, but you have to plan to plan.
Mm-hmm.
Plan
And
the plan.
Yes. That's good too. But you even have to plan to have a plan, so to speak.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't dismiss that automatically. This is coming from some folks that have been around for a little while, and
you would know it in the non-EOS world as creating your mission statement.
Yeah, or
your
but this even or your BHAG.
Yeah.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff.
But this even goes. But what EOS does so beautifully is bring all of that together.
Yeah, into one framework, one system.
Right.
That does that. And so this is just one component of that system, which is the quarterly meeting.
And I think it's important what you were saying earlier, Keith, with many small businesses, the plumber that's just getting started. I talk to people all the time, and it's interesting, the conversations. The first thing they'll say is, I'm too small for EOS. It says you need 10 to 250 employees or whatever. That's not completely accurate. For it to run really well, yeah, you need probably 10 employees. But if you don't start and build the foundation today, with what you want your company to look like in 5 years, in 1 year, then how are you going to get there?
Yeah.
You're just flying by the seat of your pants.
It's sort of like people that want to train jujitsu, and they're like, "No, I'll do that when I get in shape enough."
Yeah.
Right.
Or I want to try. I want to try CrossFit, but I want to get in shape first, and then you just never do it.
Right.
How do you get in shape? You just go do those things. Then you get in shape by the process of that. If you want to get to 10 employees, team members, then you probably ought to do what people with 10 employees or team members do to get you there.
Operate now what you would operate when.
Yeah. So quarterly meetings happen every 90 days.
Yep.
Because we can focus for 90 days.
Right.
We're moving forward with this discussion with the premise that you've got an annual plan. You've taken a little bit of time. You've set some annual goals in your life, in your business, whatever. And maybe you've even gone so far, hopefully you've gone so far to visualize where you would like to be in 5 years or 10 years.
Correct.
And you've got a goal there.
Right.
I like to think that quarterly meetings are a bit like tracking your coordinates. When you're when you're out in the ocean and you're going to sail from Hawaii to California, it's going to take you a certain amount of time. You set the course, you know exactly where you're going, but you need to check that stuff like every 4 hours. You
That's a good illustration.
All your equipment. Because if you veer off about 1 degree over 2,000 miles gets to be a really big, you end up in Mexico, when you're trying to go to San Francisco.
It goes along with the 1 year. If you just look at things every 1 year, man, you may be way off track and you have no way to pivot. So
if you do it quarterly, you got enough time to get some feedback on how your plan is going, and you've got enough time to pivot to hopefully change the outcome of the year by taking a little bit of time and working on the business, not in the business. I'll also say one more thing before we keep moving forward, is that you're setting this plan generally sometime end of November, maybe December for the next year. You don't really know what's going to go down over the next 2 or 3 months.
No. Could be a pandemic.
It could be a pandemic.
Who knows?
It could be you weren't able to hire as many people. It could be some of the hires that you thought were going to be great. They just didn't work out, so now you're scrambling. It could be a number of things. It didn't rain, for however long. So you just don't have all the facts, but when you get to stop every 90 days, you have much more information to help you focus in on what the issues or the obstacles might be in your way towards that annual goal or 5-year goal or 10-year goal. So,
and that's why it's so important to actually read through the entire VTO word for word and make sure that everything is still on track. So I think a lot of businesses try to brush through that and breeze through that too fast and not actually spend time there. But if you don't make sure everybody understands the plan, everybody's on board with the plan, and that the plan is still good, then you could be still going off course.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I was about to say I had to redo my VTO several times.
And I think that's normal.
Yeah, I think so. I think you should, because as you get into EOS, what I found, and as you start having regular meetings, quarterly meetings, is you find that the VTO may not be describing exactly what you are.
Yeah.
And that's where I was.
And if you're, let's say, aware enough to surround yourself with other folks that are trying to operate on EOS, like maybe you join a local EOS resource and networking group called Energy.
Do they have those?
They have those, and they meet once a month in Fairhope. Fourth Thursday of the month in downtown Fairhope, and they meet the second Wednesday of the month in downtown Mobile.
However, some of our listeners that don't live here has even asked, do we stream those?
We may be able to do that.
Yeah.
But if you surround yourself with other folks, and if you're like Forrest, you're hardcore enough that you just create your own, good. You're around other people that you get more information and more feedback. And the more you get as you continue to grow, you can keep adding more pieces to it each quarterly meeting.
Absolutely.
Sid and Keith, when I was on your podcast, I shared my story of how I was $250,000 in debt, and then how I turned my business around and grew it into a highly profitable, multi-million-dollar lawn and landscape business. I'm Steve Bousquet, and we've created a program consisting of courses and coaching that guide people through the process and tools I use to turn my business around and grow it into a highly profitable, multi-million-dollar lawn and landscape business. You can find out more how I did this by visiting greenprofitacademy.com or by going to Amazon and buying our book, Profit First for Lawn Care and Landscape Businesses, right on Amazon.
Hey there, listeners. I want to give a shout out to a friend and sponsor of ours, Chris Drogmiller from CMD Fencing. Let me tell you, I've had the pleasure of working with Chris personally over the last 3 or 4 years, and I've never encountered a fence contractor who excels in communication, craftsmanship, and timeliness like he does. Chris always delivers. I mean it. Fair prices, top-notch work, always on budget, and the best part for me, always on time. So if you're in need of a fence company to help you with a fence or any other outdoor wooden structure, give Chris a call. You won't be disappointed. Get in touch with Chris and let him and his team take care of all your fencing needs. CMD Fencing.
Hey guys, I want to tell you about my friend Wes Cody. He's the president of C2 Wealth Strategies, a financial advisory firm dedicated to providing personalized solutions for your financial needs. Wes and his team of professionals are passionate about helping clients create wealth and achieve financial freedom. At C2 Wealth Strategies, they believe in taking a holistic approach to financial planning and are committed to building long-lasting relationships with their clients, ensuring their financial well-being every step of the way. Don't leave your financial future to chance. Contact Wes and C2 Wealth today at c2wealth.com to schedule a consultation. Let Wes and his team help you build your financial future.
I want to take a moment to talk about someone who's been instrumental in my personal and business success. That's Johnny Barranco and his team at Barranco & Associates. For over 7 years, Johnny has been my go-to accountant and financial consultant. I can tell you that he's more than just a tax preparer. Johnny takes a holistic approach to all my financial dealings, aligning them with my long-term plans and personal lifestyle. I've recommended Johnny to several friends throughout different business groups around the country, and the feedback has been nothing short of exceptional. His expertise and service are top-notch. So if you're looking for someone who not only prepares your taxes, but also helps you strategize for the future, Johnny and his team at Barranco & Associates are the ones to call. Trust me, you won't regret it. So contact Johnny Barranco today and take the first steps towards financial peace. You're not going to regret this. So I think we've touched on what is a quarterly meeting, and we've touched a little bit on why is it important. Where should you have them? Again?
Offsite. I mean, I've
done
done it.
Say it again.
You need to have it offsite. I've tried it inside the office and just tell the office to leave you alone, and it's not the same thing. I mean, you see things on the wall, you see paperwork that's in a pile. It's too much of a distraction. So you really need to step away, spend the extra money, go get a hotel conference room or some other type of property or something. It's worth the $300 or $400 or whatever it costs to get offsite, and it really does punch you out of the business so you can work on the business instead of working in the business. And so definitely do it offsite.
Punch you out of the
It's kind of like clocking in and clocking out. You're clocking out of working in the business and you clock into working on the business.
Oh, okay.
So
there we go.
Yeah.
We're gonna get punched out.
Well,
And I
that's
would think,
jujitsu.
and I would also think that it brings some connectedness between the team as well to get out of the office together.
Like a
doing
field
that
trip.
kind of stuff. Like a field
Like
trip.
a field trip.
You know how I love a road trip.
You do love a road trip.
I do.
And Keith's really concerned about where we're gonna eat every time. Okay. So that's good. Who should be in these meetings?
Good question. So from a EOS structure, you should have a leadership team in place, and that may be 3 members. It might be 5. You get too many members, it gets complicated. That's a whole nother conversation about leadership structure.
Does that go back to the too many chiefs thing?
Well, not so much too many chiefs because EOS builds the structure. It's too many lines of communication.
Lines of communication.
Yeah, every person you add is another exponential line of communication, and the more people you add, then you start breaking down trust. So The typical EOS model, the default is 5 people. So you got your visionary, integrator, director of sales, marketing, director of ops, director of finance admin. You could have other titles or whatever, but it's really somebody over finance, somebody over operations, somebody over sales, and then your visionary and integrator. So that's the typical model. But as a leadership,
and if you're working that in your family and your marriage, and you have more than 2 people, you're Mormon.
Yeah, probably, or I don't know. Maybe you're. I don't know. Maybe mom lives with you and she's part of the whole process. I don't know.
Yeah.
well, and there's a lot of people that do it in their families.
Not a lot. There's only one that I know.
No, he's the only one you know. But
Yeah.
Again, talking to people across the country, there's more and more
Well,
people
there's
that
a whole
starting
book.
to pick it up.
There's a book.
Yeah,
EOS
Yeah.
Life.
Yeah.
yeah,
You can go get that. It's very small.
yeah.
Not a
It's
big
a
one.
short book. But it's back to who should be in those meetings. Your leadership team should be in those
Yeah.
meetings. So your heads of departments, your heads of divisions should be in that meeting, and they should come together. And it's important to prepare for that meeting. So there's a lot of times where people just show up to meetings. This is not something that should be taken lightly. So part of our process is, we have a quarterly meeting scheduled. It's scheduled. So we have a quarterly meeting. We schedule the next quarterly meeting at that quarterly meeting.
Yes.
So we know what the end date is. And that's important to understand what the end of the rocks are, when that next meeting is, that you have it on the calendar. With that scheduling, you need to make sure that everybody understands what you're going to talk about before the meeting. So typically what I do, and I think a good practice is to send an email out to the leadership team a week before. Hey, our quarterly meeting is on, June 1st or whatever it is. We are going to talk about this is the agenda. These are the things that we're going to talk about. Make sure you read over the VTO. See if there's any issues that you want to bring up. Read over the accountability chart. That's another part of the process, is to go through that accountability chart line by line. It's another thing that companies sometimes skip and don't think is important. But if you go through that accountability chart line by line, you will uncover people issues.
Oh my God.
You will. It's just part of the process. I had an experience where we were going through the accountability chart at a previous company. I thought the people that were reporting to me were in the right seat, thought everything was going great. And we got to a person on the accountability chart, and the other members of the leadership team, good for them, they challenged me and said, hey, I've got an issue. There's a people issue with this person. Oh, all right, let's stop. Let's deal with that people issue. And so we would go through the people analyzer, figure out, is this person in the right seat? This one, we ended up, he was the right person for the company. He was in the wrong seat. So then we could make an issue and figure out what we would do with that person. But can't minimize the importance of going through that accountability chart line by line and making sure that there are not people issues. Because if you have people in your business, you have people issues. Am I right?
You 100%.
Yeah.
Preach.
Preach it. Okay. So make sure you send an agenda out. So this part of the agenda is, and it's structured just like a 90-minute meeting, but it's an 8-hour meeting. Mm-hmm. And visionaries sometimes struggle with being in a room for 8 hours. Make sure you give your visionaries breaks. I think you like the every hour and a half or so walk around the building, whatever building we're in, and so that,
I'm usually pretty good with meetings.
Yeah.
But I think I got conditioned.
Yeah.
Earlier in my life.
Yeah. So make sure that you're taking breaks, but the agenda is pretty straightforward. So you go over the objectives. So what are the things that you want to cover in the meeting? You check in. Again, a lot of times companies look past this. What you want to do is go through and celebrate the wins. So each person has an opportunity to share something great that happened, celebrate a win from the last quarter, personally and professionally. Mm-hmm. And I hear it all the time. Well, why do I have to share something personally? Because it humanizes the meeting. It really sets the stage.
It's all on the same page.
It's all on the same page. And, somebody will say, hey, my son graduated from college. And if you're across the table, you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's a human. He's got a family outside of this business.
I remember when that kid was 7 years old.
I remember that kid was 7 years old.
I'm probably going to handle you with much more maturity and much more grace.
Right. So that segue of sharing something personal and professional in that check-in is really important. And then another part of the check-in is to, share what's working and what's not working. So each department head, each person in that meeting should go through, and this, again, goes with the preparation. When you get good at EOS, you'll prepare your leadership team ahead of time so that they aren't trying to figure all that out in the meeting. They've already got that prepped. That'll save some time. But what's working and what's not working? And that's a time to not focus on necessarily what's working in your own department. You need to look at that, but you may be observing something in another department that needs to be brought up. So that what working, what not working is a good important portion. And then the last one is, what do you expect from the meeting? So side story, the funniest story I've heard from an EOS implementer on what to expect from the meeting. He says this was true, and I believe him, but he was in a meeting, and it was a family business. And the husband was the visionary, and the wife was the CFO, and then they had other people on the team. And the implementer had already figured out there was probably going to be some issues on this team based off his initial meetings. But he went around the room, did the intro, the check-in, and got to the wife and asked what her expectations were, and her expectations were to get out by 2.
Oh.
And the story goes that the visionary fired his wife on the spot because she was not going to fit in with how they were trying to do business, was not going to be a core value fit.
Yeah.
And supposedly their marriage was stronger after that. So
well, yeah.
That was the most dramatic story I've heard on a quarterly.
But it sounded like it needed to happen.
Sounded like it needed to happen.
Yeah.
So,
It's
so
tough
check.
work.
That probably needs to happen a lot, not just one way, but both ways in family business.
Keith is talking to himself right now.
Yes.
Okay.
So check in. That's the second part, and the review prior quarter. So you really need to go through, and we talked about numbers, looking at your scorecard metrics, looking at your rocks. Celebrate those wins, and you got to make sure that you review all those rocks and allow the person who was responsible, who owned that rock, to be able to share that win or share the failure too.
Tell me what a rock is. Just brief.
So rock is a 90-day project. So a rock is something that you need to accomplish inside the company. Okay. The team has agreed that this is a priority. It's assigned to one person, so only one person can own the rock. That person can get help from other people, but only one person can be accountable for that rock. And it's a 90-day project. It needs to be something that is realistic. It needs to be something that's timely, so it's 90 days. It needs to be something that's attainable, and it needs to be something that's smart, something that is clearly defined. So a rock is not increased sales.
Are you setting these rocks in your quarterly meeting or before? Because I just heard you say review the rocks.
So in this part, you're reviewing the rocks from the previous quarter.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So this is the recap from the previous quarter. What are the rocks from the previous quarter? And then later on in the meeting, you set the rocks for the next quarter. So that's a good question.
Gotcha.
So reviewing the prior quarter, reviewing sales, reviewing scorecard metrics, reviewing what happened, making sure they're everything in line. And in that process, will create issues. So in the EOS world, issues are where we spend a lot of time in meetings, and issues are something that we need to identify, discuss, and solve. And so you'll find issues, especially in reviewing that prior quarter. Next part is reviewing the VTO, so the Vision Traction Organizer. That's the 2-page business plan. We've talked about that a good bit already, but what's your 5-year plan? What's your 1-year plan? Your 3-year? Your quarterly? What's your core values? What's your core focus? All those things need to come into scope, and everybody needs to understand what those are.
What's your go-to-market strategy?
What your go-to-market strategy is.
Is that still relevant now?
Yes. Has it changed?
And it could change.
Yeah.
Who's your target market?
What's your 3 uniques?
Yeah.
What are the 3 uniques?
What's your proven process?
What's your proven process?
Yeah, man.
So it really is. It's amazing. And I'll say this from a personal experience multiple times. If you build out that VTO, if you ever have to work with a marketing firms just go crazy over that. And, you're able to pull that up and show them that, they'll just go gaga over it because they have to extract that information out of clients. And in the EOS world, show them the VTO and they have everything they need to get started.
Yeah.
So the Vision Traction Organizer. And then in a quarter, what you would want to do is cover an EOS toolbox item, and that is a time where you cover some skill that needs to be shared and everybody needs to understand. So you might say, what is an EOS toolbox item? It could be reviewing IDS, how to properly identify, discuss, and solve problems. It could be how to develop rocks. Mm-hmm. My favorite is the cash flow driver. Cash flow driver
is a good one.
Is a huge benefit to companies. Take an hour and work with that team and figure out how can you generate more cash. So that's an EOS toolbox. I think there's like 15 or 16.
My favorite is the SWOT.
The SWOT analysis.
SWOT.
That's another one. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So take a quarter and assign it out. Each quarter cover a different toolbox item. I would also say that when you have quarterly meetings and you get to your structure where you have different departmental quarterly meetings, don't just have the finance team do the cash flow driver. Have the sales team do it. Have the ops team do it. They're going to see things differently. So that was a little sidebar.
And each one of those can have different cash flow driving levers to pull.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So,
we don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much.
So EOS Toolbox, there's a list of those tools. I think there's 15 of them. Go through those. Make sure that your team is fluent and competent in those.
Yep.
And we might cover one of those every month at the energy meeting. I don't know. That might be something that's on the agenda.
Not might. It 100% is. That's actually the whole purpose. So carry on.
All right. And then the next part is you go over rocks. So this goes back to, Keith, what you were asking earlier. This is where you develop rocks.
Yeah.
And so the question comes, do you just make rocks while you're sitting in there? Yeah, but what should happen if you prepared your team is your team should come in the door with established potential rocks.
Can you create rocks after the meeting?
You should not. No.
Okay.
You should create rocks. So there's two parts to rocks. One is in the rocks section, you will create rocks and define those rocks and assign those rocks. During IDS, which is the next section of the quarterly meeting, you may come up with another rock during that meeting. You may uncover an issue that's saying, whoa, we didn't actually talk about this. We need to develop a rock. But no, you shouldn't create rocks post-meeting.
So you got it. You should not come out of a 90-day meeting and
then
add
create more
additional rocks.
No.
Got it.
So let me break down or add maybe some input from a more layman perspective in this is that the quarterly meeting's a bit like an L10, and like an L10, and those of you that are relatively new to EOS, the L10 is the weekly meeting. But the purpose of that is to uncover and discover and solve issues. And the quarterly meeting is to uncover, discover, and solve bigger issues because you're looking at more information. And so at this point in the meeting where we're talking about rocks, you've already gone over the check-ins, and then you've talked about what's working, what's not working. So what's not working is going to generate some issues, right, that are probably rocks. It's going to take a little longer than just a 1 week time frame to fix that. You're going to review prior quarter. There's going to be some missed metric there that you're going, that's an issue. I don't know why we're not generating enough leads. I'm just throwing that out there. So now we're going to take a rock to whatever, There's the VTO that may be a little messy, and let's take proven process. Maybe you've never been comfortable with that. Maybe a rock is you're going to sit with that and work through that and really kind of massage that and bring it back to the leadership team by the next quarter. And then you've got EOS Toolbox that's probably going to generate some ideas if it's a cash flow driver, and you've come up with a eureka moment. Holy cow, we need to work on that. There's a potential rock. And now you start ferreting those things out.
Yep. That's a good way to talk about it and describe it, because that rock process is a work in process during that day.
Yeah.
But
you're just kind of documenting it.
Right. But I can't emphasize enough that a good leadership team will come to the meeting with potential rocks.
Yeah.
And then it will fine tune it and, streamline it and get it to where they're much more defined and clear.
If you looked at our long-term issues, you'll see there's probably 7 or 8, and it says potential rock.
Yep.
Potential rock quarter 4.
Yep.
Because this is a rock. We won't have time for that until that quarter.
And that happens during the quarter. So back to what you were saying, Keith, earlier, Sid may uncover an issue or uncover something that needs to change, something we need to do differently. And we'll talk about it in a weekly L10, and we'll say, man, this is super important. We've got to deal with this. We can't add another rock this quarter. We've already got our rocks defined. If you keep adding rocks to the quarter, then you keep moving the goalpost, and you'll never get traction effectively. And so what we do is we take that and put it as a long-term issue. So it's basically put it over the side, define it as a potential rock, add as much descriptive information as you can so that then at the end of the quarter, when you're having that quarterly meeting, you can review it and recap it. But you're 100% right. We always have some quantity of potential rocks out there.
Yeah. All right. So then you've got, after rocks, you go to?
So to finish rocks, the one thing you got to do, you throw ideas up on the board, define what those rocks look like, make them smart. Then you keep, kill, and combine. Figure out you may have rocks that are duplicated.
I want to repeat that. It's keep, kill, and combine.
Keep, kill, combine.
Yeah.
Because you may have, so the visionary may come up with a rock, and the integrator may come up with a rock, and they're worded differently, but they're really accomplishing the same thing.
So we're going to combine those.
So we're going to combine that, make that smart, and then you define who gets the rock and make sure that the rocks are assigned.
Yeah.
So once all those rocks are done, then you can move on to the next part, which is the IDS. To your point earlier, the IDS should be building over time. One, you should have issues that come in before the meeting, so things that are documented already. But then every point in the process, the objectives, the check-in, prior quarter, VTO, EOS tool, and rocks will create more issues. The issues time, I don't remember exactly. I want to say it's like 3 hours, but you spend the majority of the time from a time block standpoint in the issues, the IDS portion. And that's where you really get deep. There are times, we've had it in the business, where we've talked about an issue in an L10 and we're like, we can't solve this right now. We need some concentrated effort. We need a block of time, and we'll throw that on the long-term issues list and solve it at the quarterly.
I was just thinking I'm going to need a lot of time to talk about all my issues.
Your issues have issues, don't they?
Yeah. Well, 3 hours ought to be good.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All right, so then you go through IDS, and to recap what Sid had said earlier, identify, discuss, and solve. IDS. That is crucial. That's a weekly thing in your L10, but it's a very crucial part of the quarterly meeting to make sure you're identifying the issues, discussing the issues, and solving the issues.
I think with these issues that are bigger, more time needs to be taken on really identifying what the core problem is and not just the symptom.
Yep.
I have been guilty of that, and I have seen it happen where we're just quick to say that surface-looking symptom is the issue, and it's not.
You would
It's
say
usually
you had a knee-jerk reaction.
a knee-jerk reaction.
Step back.
Yeah, you got to step back and really kind of. You really need to ask more questions and maybe gather more information.
Ask why 5 times.
Yeah, 5 whys.
Why?
5 whys.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? And a lot of times the issue is not the issue.
It really is.
Not that I've ever experienced that in my personal life.
Oh my God,
The issue is not the issue.
I felt like I was in marriage counseling just then.
Was it that you didn't take the garbage out, or was it something else you did 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
The issue is not the issue. So that's in business too. So
Really?
ask why 5 times. Why? Get to the root of the issue, identify it, discuss it, and solve it. Solving it will create lots of to-dos. So I will tell you in a quarterly meeting, your team, if you do it right, should walk out with lots of to-dos. And those to-dos could be come back with more information. They could be, set up a new process. They could be add this issue to another team's meeting to talk about at a different level. So IDS is identify, discuss, and solve. And then you will have rocks come out of there. You will get through an issue and you go, wow, this is really big. Hey, Jamie, you only have 3 rocks. We're going to add this rock to you, and it makes sense for you to do this, and you've got capacity. We didn't overfill you with rocks.
Yeah.
So IDS. Any other questions on IDS?
No.
Thoughts?
Just you hit the nail on the head. That's going the solving of whatever that problem is. Once you've identified the core issue, is going to result in an action.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Next steps. The next step is the next steps. And that next steps is you basically go through what all you covered, recap the to-dos. Another thing that gets overlooked in 90-minute meetings as well as quarterly meetings is not recapping and reading over the to-dos.
It really does.
And so in that
just
process,
breeze through.
breeze through
thinking you all know it.
Yeah.
No. Reread it so you can go ahead and ask the question, wait, I don't really understand what that means.
Yeah. Before we were doing that on another team, we would get to the next week or the next, whatever time we were meeting, and it's like, okay, you documented that, but I don't remember what that meant. You got some kind of acronym or, text talk or, little flavor things, whatever you're doing, and I don't know what you said, right? You knew what you were saying, but I don't know what you were saying.
Yeah.
And I was in the meeting, but I still don't know what it was. So read that, have everybody read their own to-dos, because you're going to have typically one person documenting everything in the meeting, and so if you make that accountability part where the person who owns the to-do reads the to-do, then, like you said, you can clarify, make sure you understand it, add a little bit more information, but recap the to-dos.
Yeah.
And then the last part's to conclude. And the conclude is you need to recap. So one of the questions we ask is, where's your head? So it's been 8 hours. We've been working on the business. We hadn't been checking email, hopefully. Where's your head? Are you in a good place? That helps define how the meeting went, what things might need to change next time. And then were your expectations met? In the first part of the meeting, in the check-in, one of the questions was, what are your expectations for the meeting? Shouldn't have been, we want to be done by 2. Your expectation should have been, I would like to get really crystal clear rocks for the operations team. That might be what I'm expecting. Or I want to make sure that we understand what the proven process is and have it documented. That could be. So, simple question, were your expectations met? Yes or no? And then the last question is the question we ask at every 90-minute meeting. What's your rating?
Yeah.
1 to 10. 1, horrible. 10, great. And
I think this is pretty psychological.
Yeah.
And I've thought about this a lot, is that it forces you, me, anyone, at the end of an 8-hour, 6-hour, 9-hour meeting that is difficult, and you're doing some pretty heavy mental lift.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's easy for that to get mired down with the idea that we're just sitting here having meetings to have meetings, and people can have a negative connotation about it.
Right.
However, if I'm forced to sort of revisit that and put it out, to the group, I really have to come to grips with, I got a lot out of this,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think verbalizing it into the group forces me to sort of realize that I did get a lot out of this, instead of just leaving the meeting as quickly as I can, getting in the car and just going, God, that was terrible.
Yeah.
And now I can let that sort of run through my head and think all the way through, but really scoring it, talking about, how my head is, where my expectations met. And I've never, I think that really puts the stamp on it and makes it a success.
Absolutely. Yeah, that evaluation and making sure that the meeting was a good one and that you got something out of it and that you felt like it was valuable to your time. So, yeah.
And I think EOS and its model is the only one that sort of allows and actually requires you to go ahead and score it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you get value out of this?
Right.
Yeah. All right.
All right, so that's the end. So conclude the meeting.
Yeah.
It should be done, and then
Here's a question.
Yeah, sure.
Here's a question. Who should lead that quarterly meeting?
It's a very good question. So I personally recommend companies that are implementing EOS, they really need to have an EOS implementer to get started. And part of that process is that implementer will come in, they'll run your 90-day meetings, they'll run your annual meetings. It's important for new companies that are implementing EOS. They're so busy running their business, they really don't have time to focus on, are they doing EOS right?
Mm-hmm.
And having that third party in the room to moderate the meetings is incredibly important, and to stay on schedule. So
100%.
starting out, I highly recommend.
And correct me if I'm wrong about this, but EOS actually vets these people.
They
correct?
are vetted, yes.
Okay.
If you have a certified
And trained.
EOS and trained or EOS implementer, they are vetted. They have to take continuing education courses to stay licensed, and these guys know the process. And that's one of the values of having an EOS implementer, is it's not somebody that's been exposed to EOS or seen EOS or read it in a book. These are people that are meeting regularly. They actually have quarterly meetings with other EOS implementers.
So most of our listeners probably have not implemented EOS yet. So to find one of these individuals, they either can come through us at overlaplife.com, or they can go directly to EOS.
EOS Worldwide.
Go to EOS Worldwide. There's a search, find an implementer, and they will match you with one. And you don't have to have one geographically in your area, but it for me, I would want somebody that's reasonably close, within a couple of hours, because you want to have that person in person. It's just a much better meeting. So
I agree.
Short answer is I would recommend an EOS implementer. The EOS implementers are not positioned to where they would stay in the business helping you forever. They really want you to graduate and get to where you're on your own. So maybe it's 18 months, maybe it's 24 months, maybe it's 4 quarters, 8 quarters. You get to a point where your integrator really understands EOS at that level, and they're able to run those meetings. So that integrator typically takes over and runs the meetings.
Okay. How do you handle long-term issues, and where do they come from? Like, just, how do you handle the long-term issues? And it's sort of a two-part question, but maybe just answer that first, and I'll go with the next one.
So long-term issues, first of all, we got to define them. There's something that's a bigger picture item, something that can't be dealt with in the time that maybe in a regular meeting. So long-term issues should be put on the long-term issues list, so that couple things. Typically, it's a visionary that comes up with a long-term issue because they're thinking big picture, right? They're coming up with 20 ideas a week. And
hence the question.
So visionaries typically come up with those long-term issues that really need some more time. That could be a potential rock. So put them on that list. What that does for most visionaries, it gives them a comfort level that they've been heard, but then it gives them a comfort level that it's going to be addressed at the next quarterly meeting. So document those. If you're using a software like 90, there is a very clear path. You got short-term issues and long-term issues. If you're in a level 10 on a weekly basis and you discover a issue that needs to be a long-term, you right-click on it, say make long-term. It puts in the long-term, and then you don't look at it again until you get to that quarterly meeting. So
very easy.
Yeah.
What do you do with a long-term issue that you've turned into a rock, and you haven't been able to solve it? Is that just something you just keep grinding away at?
You got to keep grinding on it. So you may have a long-term issue that you create a rock, and that rock is not attainable, not smart.
Yeah.
There could be some issues with that rock, and you've got to reposition that rock for next quarter.
Maybe you got overzealous with your rock.
Overzealous. So I had a newer integrator call me a couple weeks ago and reached out and said, "Hey, I'm struggling with the rocks for the quarter. I've got one that's a company rock, which is important, and I don't think we're going to be able to get it done this quarter. So I'd like to adjust it." And I'm like, "Well, how far are you into quarter?" "Well, we're 60 days in." I'm like, "Don't adjust it." And he's like, "Well,
this is a great lesson for everyone.
I don't want the people feel like they failed. I mean, because I said, "Well, how far along are you going to get?" He said, "We're probably going to get it about 90% done." I said, "Take the loss. Keep that rock defined as it is. Keep working as hard as you can. Get as much done as you can. Take that loss at the quarter, and then reset a new rock that does that last 10% that then you can take the win on." And it goes back to moving the goalpost. If you're constantly moving the goalpost, then nobody's going to feel like they've accomplished anything, and nothing's set in stone. So, no pun intended, stone rock.
Yeah, I hear you. I picked up on that.
Yeah.
Keith, what questions do you have about quarterly meetings?
I think I've asked them all.
Okay. What,
I think if it, just to reiterate everything that we've said, if you're going to do anything, the quarterly meeting is a great place to start.
And I would say, my little spiel of do it in your house too. Just imagine your marriage if you had a quarterly meeting with your spouse and you guys were on the same page and you built out rocks on a quarterly basis. I know I'm nerding out, but
you are nerding
I'm just
out.
telling you.
You've lost them now, Forrest. Oh, my God. Thanks for listening, y'all.
It'll definitely change the way you look at things. So.
Okay, give us a little bit of that.
Yeah.
So tell us your process. You guys have a weekly meeting.
We have a weekly L10.
Saturday one time. What time?
8 o'clock, 8 to 9:30 at Refuge Coffee Shop in Fairhope downtown.
Okay. And what are discussed? What are some typical issues?
Oh,
topics?
Typical issues are...
Not getting too personal.
No, that's fine. So typical issues are, my wife recently got a new job. So what are we going to do with her paycheck, and where are we going to put that money as she's getting her income? So there's an issue out there right now for us to discuss tomorrow morning about how we're going to break up her paycheck and what we're going to do with that money. There's an
New
issue.
convertible.
That's a sweet issue to have.
That is a good issue to have, thank goodness. But so another issue might be what are we going to do for vacation next month? And so we'll have a running list of things that we want to do, plan that out. My son, bless his heart, just graduated from college. Love him to death. I'm still trying to get him off the payroll. Everybody's told me that it's going to take a long time. But one of the issues that we're going to talk about tomorrow is how to deal with him and the credit card that we pay for. What are the expenses that we're going to allow him to use on the credit card? Drug expenses, car repairs, things like that. Versus
like
eating at
RX?
RX,
Okay.
RX. Yes,
We're not talking like cocaine
RX.
or anything on the credit card.
But the beautiful thing is that if you have that issues list, Amber will text me and say, hey, we need to talk about such and such tonight. I'm like, put it on the issues list.
Yeah.
Puts her mind at ease. She's been heard. She knows we're going to talk about it. She knows the process. On Saturday at 8 o'clock, we're going to sit down and we're going to go through those issues.
Gotcha.
And
I
then
will say that one thing, we've not implemented the whole thing.
Yeah.
But we have chosen one day a week to discuss all issues, and it's like changed our world.
It does. It relieves a lot of stress, and it just builds a structure.
No, I'll be real honest with you. With my wife, there's some issues she just got to handle right then. But there has been a lot where she has deferred, and it's been absolutely wonderful.
Yep. And then have a quarterly meeting.
So, tell me about a family quarterly meeting.
Quarterly meeting is same thing. We've got issues that we're in a weekly meeting that we're like, this is a bigger issue. Like, what do we want to do with our retirement? Where do we want to be?
Was the bathroom remodel a quarterly meeting?
Oh, my gosh, yes, the bathroom remodel. It was definitely a quarterly.
Was
and
it
was a
okay.
rock, too.
It was a rock?
It was a rock,
Oh,
yes.
my
It was a
God.
rock. So
you don't actually have to do the rock. You just have to outsource the rock. Got it.
yes, you could delegate.
Yeah.
Delegate, elevate.
Nice.
There we go.
So
You can do that in the business, too.
I still own the rock,
Yeah.
but I did delegate, elevate.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, that quarterly cadence, again, it works in the marriage too because we're accomplishing things. We're moving things forward.
Does the family have a VTO?
We absolutely have a
Vision
VTO.
Traction Organizer.
We do.
Okay.
We have our own core values.
Okay.
Have our own core
What's your
focus.
go-to-market strategy?
Don't have a go-to market strategy.
Do you have a proven process?
Do not have a proven process,
okay.
no. But it's definitely good to have that 5-year target, that 3-year
Sure,
target,
yeah.
and the 1-year plan, and the 90-day plan. So
Okay. All right.
If there's one thing that came to mind during this meeting, it was about Forrest, was that Vanilla Ice put his line directly in Ice Ice Baby.
What's that?
This is the theme for Forrest. If there's a problem, I'll solve it.
I wondered what you were doing over there on your phone.
I was just thinking about
feverishly looking up the lyrics.
to Ice Ice Baby. I remember that lyric was going through my head.
Oh my God.
thank you, Keith.
Yeah.
There you go.
Appreciate it.
I really like the next line says, check out the hook while my DJ revolves it.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah, me too.
Do you have a DJ?
I do not.
Oh,
No
okay.
one does
Just checking.
anymore.
No.
It's just a computer.
It's
Yeah,
an,
it is.
it's a- yeah.
Okay.
All right. So there you go. There is some insight on a quarterly meeting. Ran EOS Pure by the most EOS Pure
Person I know.
Yeah. Down to the tennis shoes, tattoo, everything. Got a networking group that he started. Oh my God. He runs it in his family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those quarterly meetings, again, and these are some of the big messages that I want to make sure everyone sort of gets is number one, you're going to commit to operating off of EOS. You're going to then, if you're going to do that, you're going to commit to developing out your VTO, which is a Vision Traction Organizer. You run through that. That's going to force you to think of either a 10-year target, or is it vision?
10-year target.
10-year target, 5-year. We've decided to break ours down to 5 years.
But the last, I was too, but the last EOS conference has
so
totally
his is,
rocked my face.
And there's freedom in there to
Sure,
to operate like that.
Yeah.
There's a 3-year picture,
3-year picture.
and then there's the 1-year
Plan.
And so with that, your quarterly meeting is really going to be based all around that. With the idea that you're charting your course to get to 10-year, 5-year, 3-year, 1-year, whatever it is. And let's just check, see where we are.
Yep.
How are we tracking towards that? Are we on track or off track?
Yep.
And let's sort of wait and hear till the end. I think a life or a business without frequent, what's the word I was looking for?
You've been saying it a
reflection.
lot. Reflection, yes.
Is really not done very well.
Say that again.
A life or a business that doesn't frequently reflect and look at where they are at. That may be a marriage too. That may be a relationship with your kids. That may be a diet, a fitness plan, whatever it is. But if you don't stop and just say, hey, am I on track? Am I moving in the right direction? Then you don't really take the time to sort of make sure you're on the path towards where you're trying to go. You're floating through life. There's not a whole lot of intentionality in that. And that's not really how, if you're listening to this podcast, that's probably not really how you want to be. So got to be intentional about stopping every 90 days and taking stock. Are you on track or are you off track? Anything else you want to finish with, Forrest?
I think that was a good way to end it.
All right.
Forrest, thank you so much for putting us on this path.
And yeah,
it's changed my world in a lot of ways.
Awesome.
Thank you for crossing the street from your other office and just coming on over here.
That's right.
I mean, he's over there more than anyone, I think.
I do have a reserved table, and people get confused when they come in and I'm not there. So.
I used to get confused if you were in a different spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're ever in a different spot, it's weird.
It is. All right. Well, thanks guys for listening. If you got questions about anything with EOS, reach out to us, and hopefully you're hooking up them quarterly meetings.
We're putting all for social. His LinkedIn, he's real involved there. So we'll put him on the show notes. Go bother him and talk to him about EOS.
Thank you.
Or talk to us.
Yeah, or talk to us.
All right. I'm out.
Peace. Hey guys, I want to tell you about one of our newest sponsors, Red Branch Outdoor Living. They create environments to bring people together by providing a turnkey solution for outdoor living with remarkable customer experience. They specialize in outdoor kitchens, pavilions, patios, pools, spas, and fire features. And they do it with integrity, innovation, and being remarkable. They did my outdoor space, and it turned out amazing. Check them out at redbranchconstruction.com.
Are you a business owner looking to overcome growth struggles? That's probably why you're listening to this podcast. But if you need personal help, look no further than Rick Miller with Pro 356 Consulting. You've heard about him a lot on this podcast. He's the Yoda of business, and he's here to help you achieve success. Pro 356 Consulting helps leaders like Keith and I navigate through challenges and achieve real sustainable success. Rick has over 30 years of experience helping businesses develop a balanced approach to growth and personal development. He believes in the power of people. He focuses on employee engagement, strategic planning, and servant leadership to help you unlock your company's full potential. Don't let growth struggles, personal or team-centric, hold your business back. Contact Rick Miller at Pro 356 Consulting today to start your journey toward success. Visit pro356consulting.com to schedule your consultation. Look, not all of you have to deal with workman's comp, but those of you that do know that it's time-consuming and it's a headache. Insurance in general feels like something that happens to you rather than for you. But partnering with someone that really knows their stuff, like Chris May, with LTN Insurance, you've heard him before on the podcast, offers you the opportunity to regain control of your insurance. By collaborating with Chris, you have the chance to craft a personalized plan that ensures you receive optimal coverage at the best price. At LTN Insurance, their foremost core value is centered on education rather than sales. Their core value actually says, we don't sell, we educate, because they truly believe in empowering you, the customer, with the knowledge to make informed decisions about your insurance. That's whether you do business with them or not. They want you to be informed. So you can trust Chris and look him up, give him a call, or go to the website ltninsurance.com.